Chapter 15, The Enemies of Hod.
The Watcher of the Eye stirred restlessly in his leather chair. He shook himself awake with a sigh. To be a Watcher was a privilege, he reminded himself. Accepted into the priesthood of fiery Unu, the molten sea of power, Gaia had been trained in the mystic ritual for more than 200 years and had now graduated. Once each Kegel, roughly 6 darkenings of the city, a new Watcher took his post before the Holy Eye, relieving the last warrior priest. The dark glass circle in the middle of the box stared back at Gaia impersonally, as it had for all Watchers since the beginning of time. Outside the dark room stretched the grimy length of the city. Ruined buildings littered the streets with rubble and the accumulation of millions of years of trash. Were it not for the impregnably sealed master machines, all of Garn would long since have turned to dust. But the founders of Garn had planned well, and now their descendants could be housed and fed without having to know any other trade but those of worshipper, watcher, and warrior. To be a watcher meant sitting silently for hours on end, eyes trained on the dark glass circle. There was always the hope that you would be the chosen one to see, Gaia thought. The promise was recorded on the sacred disk of Unu. Gaia closed his eyes and he could hear the disk speak again, as it did once each 100 Kegels, to remind them of their destiny. Watchers of the Eye, believe. They will return. The Eye will glow redder than the fires in the tunnel to Unu. And on that day, you will arm yourselves against their coming. Destroy the wicked ones from Hod. Wait and watch. Being a warrior priest had its privileges, and a watcher was to be envied. Gaia glanced proudly at the fire suit he wore. It was the garment of his high office. Made of silk and diamond thread, it clothed him from head to webbed toe, swathing all 9 feet of him in a transparent cocoon. When he pressed the button at his belt, the watcher could change the temperature which this suit surrounded him with, to meet any extreme. A fortunate garment to possess, for it meant he could leave the city's normal 100-degree temperature and move at will in the lower levels, even travel the tunnel to Unu itself. There, where the cyclone fires burned, the heat would seem as nothing. What a rare privilege, to gaze on Unu itself, with its molten seas and searing clouds of white-hot steam. Unu, Unu, source of power to run the world. Gaia jumped slightly as the door creaked open and Lu strode in. Ah. About time, Gaia grumbled. His companion turned the regulator on his fire suit to the minimum setting, removed his gloves, and tossed them on the table in front of the Eye. I've just come back from the tunnel, Lu told him. My tour of duty ended last night. Now I'll be spending another Kegel in this dark room, alone with my thoughts. It is a privilege, Gaia answered stiffly. Yes, a privilege. Of course. Lu said the words in a flat voice. Tell me, have you seen anything on the Eye? The question was innocent enough, but mocking. Nobody had seen anything on the Eye in recorded history. And that went back since the awakening, 10,000 years ago. The Eye, of course, was older by far than that. It had existed when the city was born, it was older than recorded time. Lu slipped into another chair next to Gaia's. I haven't talked to anyone all this Kegel. Let's chat a while, eh? Suit yourself, Gaia replied, still angry at the flippancy with which his fellow watcher treated their sacred post. He reached in the pouch of his fire suit and took cut some sticks of gene. Popping one in his mouth, he handed the other to Lu as a sign of truce. The younger watcher accepted and chewed the gene contentedly. Soon his body was tingling, and a feeling of tranquility crept over him. Now it would not be necessary to sleep for another full Kegel. I was wandering around in the knowing house this morning, Lu said, settling himself comfortably in his chair. I found this old memory disk way up on a top shelf. I put it in the projector and it turned out to be one of the oldest writings in the entire library. The picture was faded, so you can imagine how old it must be. What about it? Gaia asked, finally swinging his gaze away from the Eye. It told of the beginning, Lu replied, his voice shaking a little with excitement. I'm sure nobody has seen this disk in hundreds of years. It was far more detailed than what is taught us at Watchers School. Want to hear about it? If you like, Gaia replied casually. Lou was not fooled by the boredom in his friend's voice. Sometimes, Lou thought to himself, Gaia was rather stuffy. Particularly if the discussion happened to touch upon sacred matters. Very well, Lou continued, I'll give you a capsule account. It told of the Great Flood and how the city of Hod sank below the waters. And it also told of how our own city's founders went in hiding in Hod, determined to seize control from the feuding despots. But a plague wiped out most of the Hadeans and only 20 of our ancestors managed to escape from the city before it was too late. To do this, they seized a new form of vehicle from Hod, called the mole, which could burrow through solid rock and was impervious to temperature change. These forebears of ours traveled in the vehicle until they had put many miles of solid rock between themselves and the doomed city. Then they used the vehicle to blast a huge cavern and, as time passed, it became our city of Gun. They were able to tap all the power of the Sea of Unu and even to borrow power from Hod's underground energizers. Then, as you know, the era of Unu began. The earth shook and turned over, the rocks melted, and the tunnel back to Hod was sealed off forever. Some of our city was knocked down, but all those centuries of planning saved us from destruction. When the temperature reached 2,800 degrees and we were in danger of evaporating outside of our fire suits, the Great Ones decided to put our surviving members to sleep with the preserving gas. Lou paused in his narrative. Observing that his friend was listening now with wide-eyed attention, he went on. That was millions of Kegels ago. The power machines did their job faithfully during all this dormant period. Garn remained most intact. Then we awoke, when the inner world had returned to normal. Only... Again, he paused. Gaia stared at him impatiently. Only what, Lou? By Unu talk. Lou shrugged his massive shoulders. That was the end of the recording. I don't know what followed. There were no other history discs that go on from there. Only the ones that were recorded earlier and which we use to make the power machines work, and those we learn to read by, and those our priests used to teach us about Unu. There's a big gap, Gaia. Nobody knows how to rebuild the mole, for instance. If we knew, we could leave Garn and go upward. Upward? Gaia looked at his friend as if regarding a lunatic. What could be upward except endless rock? Or downward but the seas of Unu, where the hardest rocks turn to liquid. Still, it would be something to see what lies beyond here and the closed end of the tunnel, wouldn't it? Lou persisted. Don't talk like a fool, Lou, Gaia muttered uneasily. We are watchers, you and I, and we are warriors too, who hunt and destroy the evil creatures of the lower world. Is that not excitement enough? Go report to the Watchers Council, Lou sighed. I'll start my Kegel now. Yes, Gaia said, getting up from his chair and putting on his gloves. I'll fill in my report and maybe join a hunting party. I need some action. Of course you do, Lou agreed. 6 days and nights of staring back at the eye keeps one tensed to fever pitch. Oh, Lou, you're hopeless. One day you will come to the attention of the Master Watcher. Then he'll probably send you on a one-way trip to Unu. Lou grinned at his departing friend. Gaia might be a faithful follower of Unu, but he would never betray him to the authorities. The young Ganian slumped in the chair and resignedly focused his eyes on the black box. If that eye glowed red, what would he do? 1,000 generations watchers had probably asked themselves the same question. He would push the black button next to the red one, Lou knew. And all of Gun would be saved from the invading warriors of Hod. The remaining 10 miles of tunnel would be blasted shut, he supposed. 10 miles of tunnel through superheated rock that was just this side of melting. A hole that led tantalizingly upward from the roof of the city, only to end in a solid plug of fused rock. And on the other side? Another 10 miles or more of tunnel that finally ended at the fabled city of Hod. Lou stared glumly at the black button. Press it? All these years of wondering what lay beyond the sealed tunnel would end no future chance to see with his own eyes if there really was another world outside of Garn and the terrible lower regions that led to Unu. Fill that last escape route with millions of tons of white hot rock? Then have the power machines cool it into a solid plug? Lu knew his thoughts were treason. He would keep them to himself in the future. As he left the Watcher's chamber, Gaia frowned with annoyance. Lu had started him thinking again, and he did not like to think. He decided to go at once to the Huntmaster and ask for a place on the next hunting party. Gaia was a little older than his friend Lu, and he had quite a reputation as a warrior. Each 100th Kegel he volunteered for the dangerous mission down the tunnel toward Unu. Only 12 warriors were chosen to make the journey, but Gaia knew that his request would be granted. He had gone down to the lower world at least 40 times and never had returned without a box filled with the all-important hot dust known as Onyx. It was this precious substance which brought life to the machines. Without Onyx to feed into their reactors, all the machines throughout Garn would come to a stop and there would be no air to breathe, more power to make light and coolness. And if the machines stopped, billions of tons of pressure would crush down upon the city and the rocks would flow like syrup. Yes, it was most important to hunt for Onyx. Each warrior could carry back enough to run the machines for 20 Kegels. Hunting the hot dust was more than a sport, it was a necessity, and its pursuit was entrusted exclusively to members of the Watchers. Only a handful of them could survive the dangers of the molten sea, the frightening storms, and the hideous beasts of the lower world. To be a hunter was a right reserved for no more than 100 citizens of Gun. Gaia strode down the dirty main concourse, picking his way around the larger boulders and bits of shattered glass which and tumbled from the ceiling of the vast cavern and from the buildings themselves. The machine which had once roamed up and down the streets and through the buildings to suck up dirt and debris was now broken. He had watched it go about its traditional task when he was a child. But now the Marchine stood opposite the Master Watcher's palace. A huge boulder had fallen years ago and stopped it dead on its webbed tracks. The trouble was, nobody in Garn knew how to fix any machine which stopped. Gaia wondered what would happen if the Airmaker stopped one day. Passing the palace, he turned into a smaller building of ruby-red glassite, and was halted at the door by a guard. "Identify yourself," the guard intoned, raising his ice gun sloppily to a half-ready position. "I am Gaia the Watcher," came the reply. He glared at the guard angrily. "I am wearing my fire suit. I have the Watcher's red stripe on my shoulder. How dare you challenge me?" The guard's eyes blinked stupidly. "I am sorry, Overlord. I am new to this position. You are also drunk with Jianu," Gaia snapped, noticing the guard's unfocused eyes. "Are you aware that taking happy drugs while on duty is a major offense?" "I regret, Overlord. I have not been well." And 99 Gaia's hand closed on the butt of the ice gun at his own belt. This fool should be eliminated. As a Watcher it was his privilege to raise his weapon, freeze the culprit solid, and watch him shatter to powdery bits. But Gaia merely pushed the terrified guard aside and walked through the door. Let the fool go on living. Jianu was probably his only joy in life. Anyone less than a Watcher priest of Unu was little better than nothing. Each time something broke down in the city, there was one less job to do, one less source of recreation. The mirror theater was gone now, its huge screen cracked and useless. The sports palace had fallen to pieces thousands of Kegels ago. In all of Garn, there was nothing to do but study to be a Watcher, a priest, a machine attendant, or guard. And to enjoy the happy drug when off duty. Gaia approached the desk of the Huntaster. The old warrior glanced up, and his eyes lighted with pleasure. "Gaia, my old friend. It is good to see you once more." He scratched his scarred jowls and then his needle teeth showed in a mirthless grin. "Have 100 Kegels really passed again? You wish to join the next hunt?" "Yes. I need some excitement." "Excitement is it?" Balu the Huntmaster peered at his visitor mockingly. "I would have thought that you considered it a holy mission rather than a sport, to hunt for Onyx." "Oh, that too," Gaia replied. His jaw tightened, for he saw that the old warrior was baiting him. "May I have my dust box?" Gaia asked. He was anxious to join the others. The next hunt would leave in less than an hour. Balu limped to a storage chest and lifted out the flat, lead grey dust box into which the precious onyx must be put to protect the bearer from death by radiation. Gaia took the container and slung it over his shoulder, then locked it securely to the back of his belt. It weighed little now, but when the dust was placed inside, it would take a strong warrior to carry it without complaining. How could a handful of dust weigh so much? Good hunting, Baloo wheezed. May Unu guard you well.